The senator from Alaska.
Mr. President, thank you. I would ask unanimous consent that privileges of the floor be granted to my fellows for the remainder of the year. That would be Abby Lyons, Aaron Stuvland, Dosen Nigan, and Robert Bruce.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. President, I'm pleased that we're at this point in the Senate calendar when we're talking about legislation on the floor. We have S-870, which is the Fire Grants and Safety Act. I'm a sponsor, a proud co-sponsor of this measure. My state of Alaska routinely faces severe fire seasons every year. I'm co-chair of the Senate Fire Caucus and follow these issues very carefully, whether they are wildland fires or fires in our urban centers. But I believe that we have a bill in front of us, a measure in front of us that deserves our support. The Fire Grants and Safety Act is a pretty simple bill. It's not very often that we actually have things that are simple and short, and this one is just a few pages long. It reauthorizes the U.S. Fire Administration, the Assistance to Firefighter Grants Program, as well as the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response Grant Program. That's the SAFER program. It reauthorizes all of these through 2030 instead of allowing them to expire next year. The Fire Administration's authorization is increased slightly, but the rest are basically straight extensions here. And as I mentioned, it's a pretty simple bill, but I think it's important to appreciate and understand the importance, because sometimes I think these programs are underappreciated. They help our local fire departments recruit personnel. Pretty important. We've got to get those firefighters to us. But not only recruit them, but to retain them as well. It also helps allow them to purchase updated vehicles and equipment. They also help our fire stations by providing for safety and rescue training as well as health screenings. The Fire Grants and Safety Act is also a very timely measure, and not just because we are looking at these programs nearing their expiration date, but our U.S. Fire Administrator has reminded us that America is still burning, was the quote. Last year, fires destroyed over 1 million structures and over 7.5 million acres of land across the country. Again, in the state of Alaska, it is not unusual that we have 1 million plus acres burn each season. In many seasons, well more than 1 million. But in addition to dealing with the impact to the lands and to structures that are on them, it is the safety issue that comes with fighting fires. Approximately 2,500 people, including 96 firefighters, have died because of these fires. And again, as we are seeing wildfires become larger and more catastrophic, the danger that it presents from a health safety perspective, but also the devastation and impact to the land becomes that much greater. In our state, in Alaska, our geography and really our lack of core infrastructure oftentimes makes it harder to respond, sometimes really not possible at all. But you've got wildfires that can start hundreds of miles from a road system, difficult to deal with. But then you have house fires in one village off, where road travel, there is no connection between the two villages, and inability to help address a local fire, as we have seen unfortunately, on far too many occasions. Just last month, the Kennecott-McCarthy's Volunteer Fire Department received $77,950. Doesn't sound like a lot in terms of the dollars that we talk about here on this floor, but it was $77,000 plus to support recruitment and retention of firefighters. They were able to utilize FEMA's Safer Grant program. Again, this is a program that's going to sunset this year. But let me put the Kennecott-McCarthy Volunteer Fire Department into context. This fire department is over 300 miles from Anchorage, the large city there. That's about a 7-hour drive in good weather, and I would challenge people, most times getting into McCarthy doesn't make any difference what the weather is. The road is tough enough that it is going to take you well more than 7 hours. There's about 42 people that live in McCarthy, Kennecott area year-round, but in the summertime you've got a growth in population when tourists are coming into the area and folks who have cabins and properties who like to spend the summers out there. So it can grow to over 1,000, 1,200 people in the summer. It serves as the gateway to the Wrangell St. Elias National Park, so an important tourist destination for us. This little town hosted over 65,000 visitors last year. So kind of causes you to ask the question, how can a town of 42 year-round residents support this influx of outside traffic without the assistance of the federal government here? And that's exactly what these SAFER grants have allowed them to do. So believe me, that $77,000 is going to go a long way for that volunteer fire department in Kennecott-McCarthy. I mentioned that we face unique challenges in Alaska, but I would wager to say that every member of this chamber or one of your family members, your friends, your neighbors, every one of us has benefited from the emergency services that are provided by their local fire department. And so as they have helped us, it's our turn to be helping them. I am hopeful that we'll be able to move through this process. It was good to have a vote on an amendment this afternoon. We will have the opportunity for more tomorrow and hopefully be able to wrap this bill up soon this week. But I do hope that this measure will garner the same level of bipartisan support as its predecessors. Back in 2017, we passed a fire grant reauthorization by unanimous consent. I think that reflects how every state recognizes the benefit from this act. And I think that this year's effort should really be no different. The Fire Grants and Safety Act has garnered widespread support. We've got organizations and groups like the International Fire Chiefs Association, the National Volunteer Fire Council, Congressional Fire Services Institute, National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, the International Society of Fire Service Instructors, as well as the International Association of Firefighters. So great support from these very important organizations. One of my friends and a real leader in Alaska is the president of the Alaska Professional Firefighters Association, Dominic Lozano. He has shared his endorsement of this measure, and he explained that, and he says, over the last few years, Alaska has faced record fire seasons across the state, making our firefighters, rescuers, and emergency medical workers as vital as ever. And whether the fire takes place in urban or rural Alaska, our rugged terrain and harsh climate can make emergency response far more difficult. This bill will assist Alaska fire departments with hiring new firefighters to attain proper staffing levels, as well as provide valuable equipment to agencies across the state. And I really appreciate Dominic's support for this measure. I tell you, I think we know that our firefighters have an extraordinarily difficult job, a dangerous job, a job that tasks them every day. I had an opportunity to participate in a VIP day where we all donned on the turnout suits and had the hats and had the opportunities to see how the jaws of life actually worked. Had the opportunity to go into a training facility that was was built out to be a burning apartment building, and to haul the hose from the truck up the stairs into a burning room to put out the fire. I can tell you that those who went in to literally take the heat got a very, very, very small glimpse of what our firefighters go through every day. I thank all of our firefighters. I thank our Alaska firefighters, but all those around the country for the tremendous, the selfless work that they do, putting themselves in harm's way to protect our lives, our lands, and our communities. And I'm certainly committed to making sure that they have the resources to get home safely every single day. So I appreciate the leadership from Senator Peters, Senator Collins, and Senator Carper that they've put into this Fire Grants and Safety Act. Again, I'm glad to co-sponsor it with them, and glad to be able to give some short comments in support. Our firefighters deserve this bill. Our communities need this bill, and that should be enough for all of us to support it. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor and I yield the floor.
Under the previous order,